What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast, Tuesday Night Live. Tonight it is just I, your captain, Andrew Foe. Bailey is on a hiatus. He is in the Minnesota, I believe, at the Minn Kota Hummingbird Factory doing his full-time job. So we sadly miss him. Just a couple notes of what we have coming up here. We're getting into tournament season finally here in New York in the next couple weeks. Bailey's already been hitting them up, won his big one a few weeks ago down there in Alabama at Lake Eufaula, the Hobie BOS. So still a huge congratulations to him for that. I can't believe he pulled it off, but we all knew he would. He just launched his new video up on Be the Fish of Chasing Hardware, showing off his first place victory in the Hobie BOS tournament. But before we get going here, just want to let you know we have a special guest tonight in Nick Kefalides. He is a military veteran, Lake Fork hammer guy down in Texas, has an interesting backstory. So without further ado, let's get Nick on here and start talking some bassin. So what's going on, Nick? How are you today?
Good, Andy. How you doing, man?
Oh, not too bad. Were you on the water today?
Nope, I was not. I actually took today. I had to run a bunch of errands and take care of some things and some doctor's appointments. So, but I'll be out bright and early tomorrow.
Oh, what time's the sunrise down there? 6 a.m. You're on the water with clients, or?
Yeah, right now, depending on cloud cover, you're looking at about 6:10, 6:15 is safe light. So I like to be there right before then, kind of get the boat in the water, get settled, and usually clients meet me at the ramp about 6:15, 6:30, and we're off. Especially right now, a little bit of shad spawn going on, so we try to take advantage of that.
That's awesome. So it's got to be pretty warm down there in Texas right now.
Oh, dude. I think we talked a little bit before, but it's like we went from beautiful spring weather. It was like high of like 78, low of like 60 degrees, and it lasted for a few weeks. And then boom, last week we just got hammered, and now it's like high of like 105, 106 degrees, just brutally hot. And we're still in May, so I can't imagine what July and August are going to be like.
Does it make you miss Florida at all?
No, because it's just as hot in Florida, but it's just a different heat. It's that humid heat. I think being in Texas, like there's always a little bit of wind and it's a dry heat. So I think Florida might actually be hotter, even though it's only like 95 degrees. It still feels like just miserable at times.
Yeah, I was just down in Florida like a week ago, and I think it got to be like 90 and humid every day. And I was like, take me back to New York. Me and Bailey are always in agreement that like if we could have the perfect weather, it's what you described, right? Like mid 70s in the middle of the day, like high 50s, low 50s at night, and I'm the happiest person alive.
Like, perfect weather.
As soon as I get above 80, I start sweating. It's not for me.
Dude, I'm envious of some of my buddies. Like I got some buddies that guide full time, and they've got it like perfect to where they spend half the year in Florida, and the other half of the year they go up to Michigan and do that. When it gets too hot in Florida, I'm like, man, that sounds amazing. Like,
yeah. Sign me up for that.
Yeah, right.
Because you can miss me with the snow, definitely. So yeah. Except for some years we can catch smallies into the end of December, but running 10 miles out into the lake, you're freezing your fingers and your toes off because it's like 25 degrees out all day. It's just not fun.
Brutal. And if there's wind, it's even worse.
Yeah, great. Yeah, those are the days I stay at home. But before we get going any further here on the rabbit hole tangents, how did you get your start into fishing? Was it like a family member? Did you just like grab into it and go? Like
my dad. My dad. Yeah, like, dude, my dad, like, we got into it. He started taking me at a young age. I think I was real young. I was probably 8, 9 years old. And we started going, and we ended up getting a little john boat. We started out in like a 12-foot aluminum john boat with nothing but a trolling motor on it. But even before then, we like bank fish and stuff, just kind of pond hop. So that's really how I got started.
Now, have you always been down in like the southern part of the States? Is that where you grew up, or?
Yeah, I grew up in South Florida. My mom and my dad were both military. They were both Marines. They were stationed in Hawaii. So I was actually born in Hawaii on a military base. And then about the age of 2, they got out and they moved back to Florida where they were from. And that's where I grew up. I was there till right after high school when I joined the military. And I mean, Florida was cool, man. I mean, that's what I know as growing up. And, my dad, he was into fishing and he got me into it. And he always made the joke. He's like, if there's a puddle, you would fish it. Like, any kind of water. Like, I was always looking. We'd be driving down the road and I was always looking at canals and ponds because in Florida, I mean, the smallest bodies of water have the potential to hold giants. So I was always looking for the next best little honey hole.
That resonates with me. Did you grow up on like the east side of Florida or the west side? So like any ditch you could have caught, like the the peacock bass or the lady knifefish? Is that the other one that's really cool
like clown knifefish. So I grew up on the east coast of Florida, like Palm Beach County, just about an hour north of Miami. And when I was a kid, like the peacock bass and the clown knifefish, like the clown knifefish, I don't think had really been introduced heavily at that point. The peacock bass were further south. They were closer to like Miami, Broward County, stuff like that. Now, over the years, they've slowly migrated further and further north. So Palm Beach County, I mean, all those little residential lakes and even the public lakes, I mean, you can catch peacock bass. But yeah, east coast of Florida, I mean, we had the best of both worlds. If I wasn't bass fishing, my stepfather had an ocean boat and we were out in the ocean, doing that, catching sailfish and mahi and stuff. So I grew up on the water.
That is fantastic. So do you remember what your first catch was?
Yeah, I do actually. It was, and I should have sent you a picture so you could have put it up, but it was like, dude, it was like a 5-pounder that I caught off a bed.
Oh, that's awesome. How old were you when that happened?
I think I was probably like 10 or 11 maybe. And my dad and I were fishing this. It was it was a little natural lake. I mean, if I had to guess, it was probably 15 acres, 20 acres or so. But the water, like usually the water in Florida is very like tannic. It's got that tea kind of color to it. But this one was like super sand bottom, water clarity was crystal clear. You could see everything, and they were spawning. And I'm just walking down the bank and casting, and I wasn't that good at that time. I was still learning, and saw one on a bed. And man, I sat there and tried to catch her for probably a solid hour. I must have missed her 4 or 5 times before I realized I really need to let her eat it a little bit before I set the hook. And when that happened, dude, my dad took a picture, and I mean, I was on cloud 9. I mean, it was over.
Oh, that's incredible. And then it's funny how like certain fish catches from your youth like resonate with you the rest of your life. Like I have a memory of fishing the Erie Canal, which connects Lake Erie to the Hudson River that dumps into the ocean for everybody who's tuning in. And there was this little old lady. She had to have been in her 70s. I didn't catch it, but I remember this catch to this day. She'd put the can of worms on the hood of her car, take out her gloves, put it on with like a Zebco 101 and a little red and white bobber, and she would sit on like this little boardwalk. And we're crappie fishing with bobbers just as the dark was like the sun was going down, and all of a sudden she's screaming like somebody died. And she caught like this 5.5, 6 pound largemouth, and she's like holding on for dear life, almost falling in the water over the railing. And it's just like how that stuck with me. And I'm like, I just want to catch fish that big. That's all I remember. From that, it's just this old lady screaming with this little Zebco pole. It's just it's comical how little things like that we remember, but we can't remember like silly things like how far we drove one day or stuff like that. It's just
it's fun. I know what you mean. And things that are so long ago and so minute, but when they resonate with you, they just kind of stick with you and you hold on to that. Yeah.
So when was the first tournament you fished? Was that with your dad as well? Was he a tournament fisherman, or was it a buddy down the street?
No, my dad had never fished tournaments before, but I mean, we really got into it. Like once the bank fishing thing took off, and then we got the John boat, and we did that for a couple of years, and then finally we started getting serious. And Dad bought a brand new Ranger, 19-foot Ranger. And we had this whole plan. We were going to start fishing tournaments. The first tournament we fished was just a local derby. It was on Lake Istapoga. which at the time was BASS's one of the top 3 lakes in the country. I mean, it was just pumping out just absolute giant after giant after giant. And we went out there and fished the tournament, and I don't think we did very well thinking back on it, but I just remember being in awe at everything, just the whole experience. You know, you're fishing with guys out there like Roland Martin and, you know, all these people that you grew up looking up to and kind of idolizing, and just the whole, you know, all the boats and the launch, the takeoff, and just the weigh in and just the whole experience. I was hooked, man. It was amazing. And that was my first tournament with my dad. It was actually my dad's first tournament as well, so that we got to experience that together.
Is your dad still your tournament partner today?
He's not, man. He's not, because he's still in Florida. But every time we are together, we always try to make it a point to go wet a line. Whether we're fishing a little tournament together or we're just going out for fun, we try to keep that tradition going.
Yeah. Nothing like memories that last a lifetime. Always hold those near and dear to your heart, especially when it comes to fishing. Share those moments forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
simple little things in life that we can really hold on to. And going into that, like, you had a pretty big life experience in the military, but earlier you posted a story about a 5th spinal surgery. So going into that, we know you're gonna have back surgery coming up soon. Kind of like take us up into that timeline and how you're onto your 5th spinal surgery, but also like all your background in the military service. I know you're a proud Marine, so thank you for your service.
Oh man, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't even know where to start. So, well, going back to what I said, so I came from a family background of military. You know, my mom and my dad were both Marines. So I kind of grew up somewhat knowing I was going to join. And when 9/11 happened, I was actually in high school at the time. And when that happened, I mean, that was pretty much what helped me make my decision to join. So I joined in 2004, joined as an infantry guy. I've got multiple combat deployments, did 2 deployments with the infantry to Iraq. And then probably towards, I think it was the 3rd year of my career, I basically made a decision to go take my career to the next step. And I went to basically took an indoctrination and went the special operations route. And so like every branch of the service, you've got the Navy's got the SEALs, the Army's got the Green Berets, and the Marine Corps' got the Marine Raiders, or what's called the Marine Special Operations Command. And so I kind of cross-decked over to the Marine Special Operations Command. And I was there for 8 years. So total military career, 11 years. And I did a couple deployments with them, some really kinetic stuff and really crappy areas of the world. I initially hurt my back. My initial injury was actually overseas. An IED, a very large IED, struck my vehicle and flipped our Humvee into an irrigation ditch. So it's an injury from years back that, I mean, I'm never going to be 100% again, you know? And what the crazy thing is, even while I was still in active duty, I had 3 spine surgeries under my belt, and I still managed to get back to full duty. But ultimately what ended my career was the concussions. I had been exposed to so many large blasts where I was really close proximity that I had multiple concussions. And after my last deployment in 2013, they basically had a come to Jesus with me and were like, look, you got 2 options. We're either going to lateral move you into a non-deployable job where you're basically sitting at a desk, or you can be medically retired. And I didn't join the Marine Corps to do anything other than what I did. And by that time, multiple deployments under my belt, lots of combat, I felt like I had kind of gotten that monkey off my back. And I decided I opted to go ahead and get out. So I was medically retired in 2015, did 11 years. And at that time, I'd only had 3 spine surgeries. Since then, I've had 1 in 2018. And then I just found out today Results from MRI revealed that I'm going to need a fifth one. And it's just, man, I'm just active. Like I can't sit still. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing stuff, and that's kind of, I just, they told me too, they're like, look, this is going to be an injury that it's going to continue to get aggravated, and you just need to be careful. You know your limitations. So, but yeah, they when they told me today, I was like, dang, because we just moved to Texas not too long ago. So I'm just now really feeling like I'm gaining some traction with my business and building my clientele here in Texas and booking guide trips. And then I get this news. I'm like, man, that's going to put me out for like 6 weeks. So,
So what is the surgery timeline for you at this point? Like, when are you looking to get the operation done?
Probably like the beginning of July. I've got some trips booked, and it's not like an emergency surgery. It's definitely something where I'm in a lot of pain, and I'm having some radiating pain and nerve stuff going down my leg. But I've got clients, repeat clients, and new clients that have booked trips with me in the month of June, which is the fishing is like really good here on Lake Fork and some of the other East Texas lakes. And some of these folks, I mean, they've booked plane tickets already. So I told the doc, I was like, hey, look, let's do it beginning of July. Let me at least take the clients that I've booked up until this point, meet my obligation and then the people that I've committed to, and then we'll do it come July 1st, which I don't have anything booked for July yet. So we're good there.
Yeah, that'll give you a nice little reprieve during the hottest time of the year too.
Yeah, exactly. So I try to look at the positives of it. So, I'll have a little break and I'll spend that time. I mean, I'm not just going to be laid up in bed. I'm sure I'll be doing organizing tackle. I'll be doing maintenance on my reels and all that good stuff, just getting the boat ready, all that stuff that we try to do whenever we have time. I'm going to take advantage of that 4 to 6 weeks of downtime and just get it all done and hit it hard when I get back.
It'll be a good mental reset too after, a tough spring of nice, enjoyable, palatable weather in Texas to screaming heat. So it'll be a good time to actually take a breather.
Yeah, absolutely.
Personally, I don't like super hot heat, and I'm sure it's going to feel like 120 most of those days in July. So I think it's a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So now let's jump into that, right? Like, with your guide service, because I know you guide in Texas. As I was looking through your website, the biggest thing popped out to me because I knew you were a veteran is sponsoring a veteran. So how does that work? I saw there's like 3 different levels in there. Is that what clients can do? Like clients that are coming on your boat, they can pay for that? Like how does the whole sponsor a veteran program work?
Yeah, so Andy, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked, and I'll clarify. So the name of my business, Warrior to Bass Guide Service, it's not, the story behind that isn't just for like me in my military background and then coming into this awesome industry and becoming a full-time guide, but it's also kind of to signify and tell the story of the benevolent work that I am doing. I've been doing this for years, man. When I got out the military, I mean, I tried to figure out what I was going to do. I tried just about everything from, I won't even go down the laundry list of different jobs in college and school before I decided this is what I want to do. This is my passion, what I truly love. And so I got my captain's license. And since that time, I've been volunteering with different nonprofit organizations to just give back. It was my way of feeling like I was still contributing to the mission, but just in a different aspect than what I used to. You know what I mean? Because the battle doesn't stop when you get home. And for a lot of us, that's when the battle really begins. I don't know, man, it's crazy. And I know a lot of the guys I serve with probably feel this way as well. But there was times when I was deployed where I felt more at home there than I do at times stateside. And so coming home for a lot of these guys, especially if you get somebody like myself who is planning on making a career out of it, and that career pretty much gets cut short and you get the rug pulled out from under you and you're like, hey, your time is done here, time to hang your hat. It's tough for a lot of these guys. And so I pretty much, told myself that once I got my captain's license that I was going to do everything I possibly could to get guys out on the water and let them experience what I've had the opportunity to experience the things that a lot of us take for granted, going out and on a bass boat and bass fishing and fishing tournaments and just getting out there and enjoying it. You know what I mean? So to answer your question, once a month, I nominate 2 combat veterans and I take them bass fishing for a day, sometimes 2 days, just depends. And it can be anything from novice anglers and guys that don't have any experience, or it could be guys that have fished several times in their life to guys that are experienced tournament anglers. And basically, I take them out, we'll go for a day, and a lot of times the 2 people that I take, they can be guys that serve together that haven't seen each other in a really long time, and it's a great way for them to reconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can be guys that have never met but have served in a very similar capacity that could relate to one another. And a lot of times it ends up building like a lifelong friendship. You know what I mean? I've got guys that I've done group trips. I've even had trips where I've had, 6 guys come in, and I have other guides, friends of mine, bring their boats, and we get everybody together for a long weekend and do that. But the whole sponsor a veteran thing, it's basically, it doesn't necessarily have to be a client. I've had people that have never been fishing with me that live across the country that are like, dude, I love your mission, I love what you're doing, and I love the fact that you're providing this opportunity to these guys, and they just want to donate to the cause. So I've got 3 different levels on there, just to make it easy, but every little bit helps. I mean, I tell people, look, if it's $1, you know what I mean, it's $5, everything helps, whether it's going towards ice on the boat, drinks, sunscreen, any of that stuff. I mean, everybody watching, I'm sure, has a pretty good idea of all the expenses associated with a day of fishing. It's not just rods, reels, and tackle. There's a lot of other things that go into it. So anything helps, and if people look at my Instagram page, I mean, you guys will see you can go back 5 years and look at, how many veterans I've taken fishing and the experiences they had. I mean, the smiles are priceless. The experiences are priceless. And I mean, at the end of the day, it just gives you that warm, fuzzy, good feeling,
It's quite the selfless act. It's quite the incredible mission that you're doing there. And from like my experience of friends that I personally have that were in the military, I know that like I don't know personally, but I know the common ground that you're speaking of. Like they come into the workplace and they just feel lost because it's not what they're used to. It's like, I'm not saying the military brainwashes you, but like they train your brain to be warriors, right? Like to do a complete mission and then go on to the next mission. And
Yeah.
the common workplace, the common life, it's hard to complete ordinary tasks that like normal civilians see because we just go out and do it. We don't have it told what we need to do and when to complete it by, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And
No, dude, you're
yeah,
spot on. I mean, you're living such a regimented lifestyle. And like for guys that have served in a unit, in either in my unit or in units like mine, I mean, for years, you're being trained to do very specific things, and you're basically trained to treat any kind of conflict with violence.
hmm
You know what I mean? And to do it swiftly and quickly. And when you come into the civilian sector, the corporate world, and you're approached with some kind of issue, you've got to shift gears. I mean, that doesn't fly out here because it's totally different. And guys have a really hard time adjusting to that. You know what I mean? It's not, I mean, they may have been really, really good at what they did while they were in the military. And they did that for so long that's really, their brain, their mind got used to that. That's all they did, so.
accustomed to, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
Their transition's
a challenge. People ask me, what was the hardest thing in the military? And I tell them my transition, like the transition from military to civilian life, it blows any training exercise, any kind of indoctrination, anything I've ever done in the military out of the water.
Yeah. It sounds like some people in the greater minds and beings, right? Like people of a greater power in countries should find a way to help make that transition a little better for veterans and military service personnel. They shouldn't be just thrown on the street and be like, hey, good luck. Like there should be programs out there that help transition all veterans and military personnel into civilian life in a better way.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that would ever come about, but like,
dude, there are some organizations out there doing some great work. But if you look at the number of guys that are transitioning, how many guys we had when we were really, when we were at war and everybody that was getting out around the same time, if you look at the number of those people in comparison to those legit organizations, and not just the ones that look good on paper and say this, because there are a lot of programs out there that they look great on paper, but when you look at their actual mission and the difference they're making, it's not. It's not enough to reach everybody. I mean, and we've seen that firsthand. I mean, I hate to bring up the number 22, but I mean, at one point we were up to 22 veterans a day were committing suicide, and that's a huge, huge problem. Like, you know what I mean? We've got to do something collectively as a whole. And honestly, the fishing community, the amount of people that I've seen step up has just been awesome. Like that. And that's just what makes this community great. I've seen so many people just recognize that. And I mean, I don't know how many people have reached out to me and offered, if you ever need help, with taking a group of guys out, you've got my boat. I'll come out there for however long you need, my time. So it's really cool to see people step up and do something selfless to help other people,
I think we could all take a step back and do more for others and just common people in general. Like in society today, we're all so self-driven and motivated that we forget, and I'm not saying selfishly here, but I think like mind selfishly, we forget who the people are that fought for freedoms for what we can do on an ordinary day. So, I mean, I thank you completely for everything you're doing to help. It's huge, and everybody deserves help from somebody. So, because you never know what the next person's going through, no matter what your background is. Like,
Agreed.
I don't know if you saw the news here recently, but we just had like a mass shooting killing in Buffalo.
I saw that.
And there's no place in this world for hate and segregation and stuff like that. It's so sad. And if we could all take the time to reflect and help each other and build each other up, the world would be a much better place, no matter what.
Agreed. And no matter what your background is, I agree. I think as a whole, collectively, and I've said this before. I feel like, I mean, this country, we've spiraled as a society, we've spiraled out of control. And I hate to say it, but I feel like do you remember when 9/11 happened?
Oh,
do you remember how united we were? Like everybody, we were like this, you know what I mean? Like everybody.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter who you were.
Didn't matter. And unfortunately, I feel like it's going to take something like that happening again for this country to come together, because we're in deep trouble right now, and I see it when I'm out and about, but I don't really buy into a lot of the media stuff, because when I'm out also, I do see a lot of random acts of kindness from complete strangers, when you're in the drive-through and you're getting lunch or whatever, and everybody's buying each other's lunch and they're paying it forward, and it just continues to go. That stuff does still exist, and we just need to collectively, as good Americans, we need to spread that love. You know what I mean? We need to just continue to keep it going and remind people that everybody's important, everybody's special. You know what I mean?
And you never know what somebody else is going through.
No,
you never know. So it's a very humbling and sad world that we live in, for the most part, with great moments like catching giant bass in Texas.
That's it, man.
So let's get off the soapbox here a little bit. I mean, it's awesome, everything that people do and what you're doing, and I can't thank you enough. We have some comments here, people asking for your website and such, so I posted it in there, but if you want to shout it out real fast.
Yeah, it's if you just go go to your search engine, Google Safari, www.warrior2bass.com. So if you spell out the word warrior, WARRIOR, the number two, and then bass.com, it'll pull up my website. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. If you just look up Warrior to Bass, I'll pop up on there as well.
Awesome. So while we're on the guide talk, as we're moving forward here, Mike Paoletta asked this question: what lessons did you learn from Marsac? Did you learn that help you on the water?
Man, that's a great question. Attention to detail. When we everything that we did in the Marine Special Operations Command, it's all mission driven. You're not just going out and diddy bopping through the streets and hoping you get in a gunfight. Everything is mission driven. It's all intel driven. So you basically get intel, and that turns it into a mission. And I mean, we're not just kind of going out, by the seat of our pants, and just hoping for the best. Like everything in the mission planning process, it's dialed into the gnat's ass detail. Like everything and anything and everything you can think of. Like we have a contingency plan for it. We know what we're doing for this. We know what we're doing for that. I won't bore you with the details, but extreme attention to detail, and that has helped me on the water significantly. I mean, there's guys out there that maybe they're a heck of a lot better than me. The guys that go out there, the John Coxes, who just wing it and just absolutely crush them.
How does he do that? Like,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
He's got to be driving to a tournament with like a big topograph map, right, on his right hand, like his food in the left, and driving with his knees down the road to map study on the way. That's what I mean. Unbelievable.
I wish I didn't have to work as hard as I do, but like the attention to detail piece, and I mean everything from tackle prep to map studies to just doing my research on a body of water. I mean, I think that really helped me, not just with guiding, but tournament fishing and just being an overall better angler, is just having that attention to detail and those little intricate details that to some might not seem like a big deal, but in my experience, it's huge. It can be the difference maker,
Yeah, especially when you're going to new bodies of water that you might not have fished much, because you did move from Florida to Texas. Why did you make that move? And was it just from a sheer like giant fish catching standpoint? Like, I'm going to go catch giants and put my clients and my friends and all these other warriors onto giant bass? Or was there more of a strategic reason? Like,
dude, I really wish it was that cool of a decision. So, all right. So here's what happened, man. And don't get me wrong, like Florida was great. I missed the fishing tremendously. I mean, the grass fishing, the punching, the flipping, it's out of this world. It's amazing. But Florida has gotten, I mean, it's so overpopulated. It's super congested. The cost of living has gone through the roof. Like buying a house there is near impossible. And my wife and I, we were ready for a change. You know what I mean? We were just comfortable where we were at. And I was offered a job. I was offered a job in Tennessee, as a matter of fact. And this job offer was near impossible to turn down. It was basically in the construction industry, which I had no experience whatsoever. But the individual offered me this job, said, look, you don't need the experience. Your leadership and your managerial skills that you've obtained through your time in the military will give you all the success you need here. So long story short, man, I got caught chasing a dollar, and I said, okay, I'm going to put this fishing guide thing on hold. And I moved my family to Tennessee, and we were there for about 8 months. And it was kind of cool because my home lake was Chickamauga, and I got to fish Gunnersville a lot too, and absolutely love those lakes. But man, to be quite frank, man, I hated life. Like I had like 45 employees under me, and when I got there, the business wasn't what I thought it was. It had been neglected for quite some time.
So he was looking for a fixer.
Yeah, and there were some promises, unfulfilled promises made, and a lot of things just weren't what we had negotiated prior to me selling my house in Florida and going up there. But I'm going to tell you, man, I met some great people in Tennessee. That is one of the most beautiful states I've ever been to. My wife and I discussed, when we got about to the 7-month mark, and I said, look, babe, I said, money's great, but I don't know how long I can sustain this. And we had to make a decision together. And she said, okay, if you don't want to do it, I don't want you to do it. I don't want you to be unhappy, so that's where we made the decision. Okay, well, where are we going to go? Because we didn't have any family in Tennessee. We had a couple friends, but didn't have any family. We got at the time we had basically a 16-month-old little girl. And my wife's got family that's from Texas. My wife comes from a military family of Army, and her mom and her dad both live here in Texas. So she said, well, we should probably go somewhere where we're closer to family so we have that support system. So I'm like, support system sounds amazing. And guess what else sounds amazing? The bass fishing.
Big bass.
Yeah. So that was a no-brainer for us, man. We're like, you know what? Let's do it. We're actually East Texas, about an hour and a half east of Dallas. It's really cool out here. We're closer to like Louisiana, so there's you still got a lot of the trees, a lot of the greenery, a lot of the pines and stuff like that. But I mean, East Texas as a whole is just a big fish factory, man. It's just giants at every body of water you go to just has that potential, almost kind of like Florida.
Yeah. And there's a lot of little lakes that get like zero attention because everybody's so focused on the big ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of, if you look at the map, of East Texas, it's very much like Florida because there's so many little lakes that you can go hit. And like I said, they've all got just potential and they can all be really good at certain times of year.
Fun. Sign me up for that. Me and Bailey and Deacon, which is our business from the bass boat segment guy, host, we all talk about like we got to get down to Texas and try to catch a double digit because we just don't get them up here in the north. He's from Colorado. Me and Bailey live in Buffalo. Like our best shot at like a double digit fish is a fluke once in a lifetime, like maybe 1 out of 10 million chance.
Your chances are super slim.
Yeah, but we have a ton of 5 to 6 pounders. So
well, dude, you guys need to you definitely need to get down here. There's several lakes that you have that every time you go out, you just have that potential of catching that giant. Right now, dude, I was just at OHIV. We did a 4-day group guide trip for a veterans couples retreat that came in from out of state. For an organization called Higher Ground, and we went out to they were staying at a private ranch in West Texas, and it was like an hour from OHIV, so we're like, perfect, we'll just go stay out at Ivy. And dude, it was just insane. And my buddies that helped me run that trip, they actually stayed out there. I had to get back because I had this doctor's appointment Monday morning, and they stayed out there, man, and they're just smashing them. Like, I think Monday morning, my buddies went out. They had a 44-pound bag by 9 a.m.
It must be a shad spawn deal going on there too.
There is a little bit of a shad spawn, but it's not even that, man. Like that, you can get them like first thing in the morning, but they're already with this heat. They're already starting to push offshore, and that body of water. It's just. The abundance of big fish is just unlike anything I've ever seen anywhere else in the country. It's just silly.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of locals are mad now that it's like blown up the last year and a half.
It is, man. But people ask, like, what do you think about that? And I'm just like, dude, at the end of the day, people get so worked up and this and that. We're fishing. Like, we are fishing. You know how lucky we are to just be doing this?
Yeah. The little things.
Yeah, man. So it's like, I get it. Like, people want to keep those kind of things sacred. Yeah. But, there's enough water. I just think as a whole, the sport of fishing has grown. And with COVID, it really
exploded.
Yeah. And it's a good thing. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely more pressure on the lakes and stuff like that because you got more people. But I mean, what would you want this sport to do? You want it to just stay where it's at? I mean, no, we want to grow this thing. I want every single person out there to be able to experience what I've got to experience since I was a kid. I want every person to be able to catch double-digit bass, to feel that feeling. You know what I mean? Because it's exhilarating.
100%. So that leads me to the next question. How do you specifically target big bass in Texas, especially right now, like that weird funky spring that you guys had that was almost like winter kind of in temperature wise to just blast furnace of summer? So like in that 2 to 3 week month transition, like you went from what, post spawn to full blown summer pattern, right? So how do you catch big bass when the transition happens so quickly like that, and how do you follow them?
Yeah, man, it's just you gotta. One is time on the water. You know, if you're not putting in the time, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna say you won't get lucky, but that's huge. It's putting in your time, knowing how to use your electronics. You know, studying the lake that you're fishing, whatever body of water you're on. I mean, all that stuff comes into play. But also, like, if you look at whatever body of water you're going to be fishing, look at history. You know, historically speaking, what are the fish doing this time of year when the water temps get to this? You know what I mean? Looking at that stuff, do your research. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to ask questions and stuff like that. But yeah, it was, man. We went from fish that were I literally within like a matter of a week and a half. I know people that were catching 8+ pounders on beds, and guys were catching them on shell beds in 20 foot of water. You know what I mean? So it's just, but like, we'll talk about like specifically right now, like Lake Fork. Like if you're looking to go catch a double-digit bass or just quality fish in general, mixed in with numbers, like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fish main lake points. Like any of the long sloping main lake points. Some of them have timber, some have more timber than others. But if you can find them with hard spots, some even shell, like I think that's going to be the deal with this Elite Series tournament coming up this week. I think it's going to be fishing main lake points. Now, I'm not going to say that there's not guys that are going to find a crazy good shad spawn up in the creeks first thing in the morning for that first hour, and they're going to go smash them on top water. That's probably going to happen. There's probably going to be guys that do that. But like if it's me right now, if I'm going out, and not even on just Fork, like let's say we're going to Sam Rayburn, I'm going to be fishing deeper, either brush piles or windblown points, and I'm going to be throwing things like a big crankbait, deep diving crankbait. I'm going to be throwing a big football jig. I'm going to be throwing a Carolina rig, stuff like that. And
now, are there certain like baits that you're using? I see you have a 6th Sense shirt on, or like certain soft plastics. Are you burning it? Are you slowly crawling it? Like, kind of dive in there.
Yeah, so like right now, dude, like the hot bait as far as the crankbait goes is the 6th Sense C20. It's and the chartreuse blue is the color. That is like the deal,
Keith
right?
Combs.
Yeah,
that sounds very Keith Combsy to me.
Dude, that is like right now. There's I can name 5 people off the top of my head that in the past week have caught, you know, fish in the 10 plus pound range throwing that particular bait, that 6th Sense C20, and just that color just seems to just get it done. And I mean, you're literally grinding it. You know what I mean? You're finding that hard spot on the point where those fish are at, and you're cranking that thing down to get it to the bottom. And I mean, you're just dredging the bottom with that plug, and they're just eating it. You know what I mean? Occasionally, you know, if I get out there and I'm dredging it, I know there's fish there, and I'm not getting bit. I'll be cranking it, burn it, and then I'll let it kind of pause and let it float up a little bit, and then start my retrieve again. Sometimes that'll be just enough to what it takes to get them to react or to get that bite. Carolina rig,
exhilarating. That's all I'm going to say about a big plug bite is it's just exhilarating.
When it
that line
up,
jumps,
man.
And then the rod loads, and you're like, oh god.
Yeah. What's even best too is if you get like a mega giant and it loads up like that, and then like shortly thereafter starts peel and drag, even when it's like out there, you're like, oh, this is a big one. Like this is a good one.
Stay out of the tree. Stay out of the tree.
Absolutely, especially on Fork. That's the name of the game, is keep them coming. But yeah, and then the big thing on fork, everybody knows the technique of dragging a football jig, but the big thing on fork and not just on fork, I mean, there's other bodies of water it works too, is what they call stroking a jig. And it's basically where, let's say you graph over a point or whatever, and you see that there's fish, but they're not hugged close to the bottom. They might be slightly suspended, 5 feet off the bottom. You want to be able to present that bait to them and get it right in their face. And that's where stroking a jig comes into play. And it's basically where you're, ripping that thing up off the bottom, you're popping it, kind of like you would with a big Magnum, like a flutter spoon or something like that, where you're pop, getting it off the bottom. And that technique works really good this time of year. If they're not really eating at that particular time, but you're trying to get them to react, that's a really great way to catch them.
Sounds like a reaction strike type
deal. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a certain ounce, like, I'm assuming it's probably like a football jig you're stroking it with because you want to make a really long cast, but are you talking like an ounce and a quarter football jig? So when you rip on it, it falls really quick as well?
Yeah, usually the number here usually is 3/4 to an ounce. I'm sure there's guys that are throwing ounce and a quarter, but usually that 3/4 to an ounce is the deal. Some guys swear by an ounce, and then some guys will tell you no, 3/4. And I think that's just based off of their experience and what they have confidence in. But I mean, the deeper you are, obviously you want to get that thing down. But if you're dialed into a pattern and 100% without a doubt, like this is a reaction bite, I'm going to be leaning more towards that 1 ounce because you know what I mean. You don't want them to really get a chance to look at it. You want it to pop up and fall.
Yeah. Give me that big dying crayfish and let me eat it. That's
exactly
what they're saying.
Exactly.
So now that we're talking fork and some techniques, everybody who's tuning in here tonight knows that the Elite Series is going to be there for, was it the Toyota Texas Park Wildlife Tournament, the 4-day event on fork where it's catch and release, catch, weigh, release, except for they can do like the share lunker deal.
Right.
Which I think is a really cool format, especially when it's like 130 reel feel every day.
Absolutely.
You got to protect those fish. But what do you think it's going to take to win? Lee Livesey, I think, the other day on a podcast said 136 pounds or something insane. Yeah.
It's going to take, 100%. It's going to take over 130 pounds to win it. I'm even going to go out on a limb. My prediction, I'm going to go out on a limb to say it's going to take 140 pounds. Somebody catch 140 pounds this week on fork. It's going to happen. 35 to 40 pound bags are being caught out there just in the past week, every single day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you're saying I need to come there in June next year or May, like late May.
Yeah. If you like to crank, like, or drag a jig, or throw a Magnum flutter spoon, you need to come.
Yeah, the only thing I've never done is thrown a Mag flutter spoon, but it's hard for me to leave all the smallmouth bite that I have going on here right now too. So
that's insane too.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like you were telling me about where they're at. They're pretty much. Catching 100 fish days with a couple 5-6 pound smallmouth.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. That's kind of tough. And the weather's a lot better up there. So
yeah, and this year's been funky. It's not as good as it is and has been in years past, but I'm expecting like the post spawn bite end of June is going to be just silly because the fish aren't eating like they should. But back to fork, what do you think the winning bait will be?
Oh gosh, dude, I think it's going to be on a big plug. I really do. If I had to pick between that and anything else, I'm going to say it's going to be caught on a big plug. Either it's going to be an 8XD, or it's going to be like a 6 cent C20, just anything in that range, that water depth range. I think that's going to be the deal this week. And I just saw there was a tournament recently, Toyota Series tournament on Rayburn, and there was the article that they did, and there were some old timers out there that did really well, and they were throwing just good old Texas rig on a 10 to 12 inch ribbon tail worm. So some
That's
guys
real summer fishing right there.
Yeah, man. Like you don't have to complicate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that works really well out here too. You know what I mean? But specifically for guys that, but you're going to get all different bites. You're going to catch 2 to 3 pounders, and you're going to catch 8 pounders on that as well. But I think for the guys that are really trying to compete and they're really just trying to, get that big 5 fish limit each day, I think they're going to be focusing on those bigger fish and trying to just take advantage of those big bites.
Yeah. So it basically sounds like it's going to be a Keith Combs, Lee Livesey slugfest for 4 days.
Yeah, I
see who
definitely
can keep up.
They've got both. I mean, dude, they're both going to be in the top 10. I would be surprised if they weren't. But I mean, dude, there's some. We were talking about this, you and I, earlier. I mean, all those guys can fish. All those guys. So it's just a matter of just you find the right group of fish, and you can sustain that bite for 4 days. Like I think. I mean, it's hard to say, man, because there's so many of them that are so good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the hardest part. I wonder if you'll see like bag fluctuations. Like one day somebody might have like 41 pounds, and the next day their school disappears and all they can catch are 3-pounders. Yep. And then all of a sudden, like 40 pounds again because those fish show up. It happens with smallmouth all the time because they just roam and they're slightly pelagic, but they're not now because of gobies. So I wonder if like that's the same way that the largemouth react on those shell bars on hard bottom points and stuff. If they're close enough, they could kind of just meander there and back, I would assume.
Yeah, they've got something close. I mean, they'll move, but usually, like from what I've seen here, if they move, they're not too far. You know what I mean? Like you can, if you take the time, and you're good on your electronics, you'll find them and they won't be too far. You just got to look for those other obvious areas where, okay, what have the conditions done? Has the water temp changed? What's the wind done? Where's the bait? All that stuff, and kind of piece that puzzle together, and you should find them not too far from where they originally were.
So on that basis, like I'm thinking in my mind instantly, like, could be on the hard bottom point, right? This hard sloping main lake point. They're on the hard bottom, and you might have like trees in the middle of it. Because those bass leave that hard bottom point and slide up and suspend in a tree like 8 foot away, and then all of a sudden you have old Patrick Walters walking by with that jerk bait sniping them.
Dude, and that's the thing. Like some of these guys, I mean, like right now, the water temp, I mean, it's getting up there. I mean, it's in the 80s right now.
Ooh, and that's toasty.
Yeah, but and most people would kind of think, okay, I'm not even going to bring the jerkbait rod, but 100% when those fish do suspend right now, you can go out there and still catch them on a jerkbait. You know what I mean?
So Michael McDaniel here has a good question. Do you think there will still be a shallow bite or any last minute spawning bass?
Yeah, Michael, good question. That's 100%. No questions asked. There are still some fish that are being caught. They're still pre-spawn. Now, I'm going to say the majority of them have already done the deal, and everything is primarily, transitioning to that summertime offshore pattern. But a buddy of mine yesterday caught a big old 6-pounder full of eggs. You know what I mean? Out on forks. So there is going to be a shallow bite, definitely. There's still a good shad spawn going on. So I do think early morning that's going to play a role for guys that are, wanting to do the topwater thing. As far as it being like a sight fishing deal, I just don't see that being. They're out there, but I think they're so few and far between on beds right now that I don't think any of those guys are going to commit to that. You know what I mean? Like there's just not enough there to give them the chance at winning to do it. But there are still some fish that are in the midst of spawning right now. We just had the full moon. Yeah, last night was a full moon.
And then 2 nights ago was a solar eclipse. Lunar eclipse. There's all kinds of wonky things going on.
You know what's crazy though, man? When we were out at Ivy, while a lot of these other lakes and stuff, they're at the tail end of that. There were so many fish on beds out at Ivy. It was insane. I'm talking like you would just go down the bank and you just see giants lined up. I mean,
is it because OHIV is a deeper, clear body of water, so the water tends to stay cooler than, say, like a fork with that stained colored water?
That could 100% be it. But what was interesting, though, while we were out there is the ones that we saw on the beds, because in Texas, you've got your 100% Florida strains, and then you've got your hybrids or your F1s, the ones that are Florida, Texas mixed genetics. But all the ones that we saw in the beds, they were all 100% Florida strains, which made sense because, it's a little bit warmer, and I don't think they mind spawning in that warmer water temperature. And the ones that we caught, they were all 100% Florida strains.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
And those are always the F1s get pretty big too, don't they?
They're actually smaller because they don't get as thick. So they're long, but they're thinner. The F1s are just, I'll show you a picture when we get off here. But I mean, I got a buddy, you can see him. He's holding up two fish. One's a Florida, one's a F1, and you can just see the difference, the way that these fish are built. And some people call them a gorilla bass, and that's what it looks like. I mean, it's just,
they got the big old head, and then they're just get this like the slow taper down to the tail where they get real skinny.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Those reminds you of like the Chickamauga bass when they catch like a 22-incher that weighs 7 pounds. You're like, how is that thing only 7 pounds? It looks like 10. Got it. Okay. I never knew like the true difference. I knew there was Floridas and I knew there were F1s that were that hybrid, but I always assumed they were relatively the same. So it's kind of cool to know that.
Yeah, the ones that got the Texas genetics, the genes in them, dude, they get massive. Like that, they don't need to be that long to get to be that 10-pound range. They're just so thick.
That's so cool. Gotta love bass. So, any other insights that you have for the viewers in tonight? Like, I know fork is low. I kind of want to take a bet. How many people do you think lose their lower unit this week that are used to running around the boat lanes? Because the water's down a foot, or is it more?
Oh no, dude, it's down like 6.5 feet right now. Whew. Yeah, at one point it got down to, I want to say almost like there's like 7 or 8 feet. So what you're running into right now is fork. I mean, anybody that's seen pictures or been on fork or seen like on like Bass Live or anything like that, like it's got a lot of timber, and now that it's low, there's even more timber because there's this stuff that we used to just drive over that you couldn't even see, but it's all exposed now. Oof. So what they've had to do is there's been some local guides and some folks that have went out and basically graphed the entire lake and have made it's a boat lanes chip. And it's basically a map card that you insert into your Humminbird, your Lowrance, or whatever kind of unit you're running. And it basically, what it does is it displays the lanes on the lake that are safe to run. It'll be like basically black lines to where you can run wide open. And then there'll be areas where those black lines actually turn red, and that kind of tells you, okay, you should idle through here. And like right now, like you want to stick to those lanes because like there's buoys out there. There's like marker buoys, and those are at the actual boat lanes. But with the water being so low, those buoys have actually drifted off of where they should be. You know what I mean? So that buoy could be, 10 feet to the right or to the left of where that actual channel lane is. And it could be, potentially be catastrophic. And it's bit some people. I mean, there's been some people out here that have wrecked their boats. There was a guy that got killed not too long ago. I mean, it's very, very dangerous. And I know people, even locals, that right now they've told me I won't even put my boat in the water because I don't trust myself enough, knowing the lake well enough to be able to run around without destroying my boat or worse, So what's pretty cool though is like the guys, there's like 4 different guys right now that are selling those map chips with the boat lanes. And I know one of them, the one that I run on my electronics, it's by a guy named Lance Vick. And he posted something probably about a week ago and basically offered, knowing that the elites are coming in, basically offered his map chip to any of the Elite Series pros that are coming in to fish, basically for them to run, like, here's my map chip to run while you're here, just because he wants everybody to be safe. Nobody wants to see anything bad happen to anybody on the lake. So I'm sure all those guys that are out there running the boat lanes map chips and are being safe out there. But yeah, it's definitely a lake right now that kind of gives you that pucker effect when you're running around.
Yeah. Ugh, that reminds you of like running Lake Erie and like 7-foot waves that come out of nowhere. You're
Yeah.
puckering the whole time. Just
And
no
even
fun.
it's like you still want to watch, even though you're like watching, your tracks and stuff on your units, you're still always looking. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because and some of there's trees and timber that are sticking up. Some of them that are only might be only 15 feet outside of the boat lane. So and what's crazy is there's guys that night fish out here. So some of these guides they're offering night fishing trips where the night fishing can be phenomenal out here. I mean, it can be great, but you really got to know this lake and know where you're going and what you're doing especially if you're going to be trying to navigate the lake at nighttime.
Oof. Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one. I'll take the fishing pressure during the day
Yeah, exactly.
and deal with the slightly more safe
Yeah.
conditions. So now my question is, since the lake is so low right now, right? Like I'm sure you've heard of like the new lake effect, where like the lake rises and all that dead sediment kind of filters into the water. Do
Right.
you think Lake Fork is like right now it's in its 2000 prime, or do you think it's going to get better as that lake level re-rises?
I think it'll get better. Right now, what's like with the water level being low, it's allowing because I mean, and Fork hasn't had grass and vegetation in some time now. So I think what it's doing is it is allowing a lot of that stuff to grow right now.
Mhm.
You can go different parts of the lake right now, and you can see grass growing in areas that there hasn't been grass for years. So anytime you can get like some vegetation and anything like that on a body of water, it's definitely going to help it. But I think it's going to continue to get better as it fills. And as you know, there's nothing that they drew the lake down to do repairs on the dam. It's not just evaporation and that's not why the water is low. They drew the lake down to do repairs on the dam, but nothing feeds Lake Fork.
Hmm.
So it's got to fill back up naturally. That might happen in a year or 3 years. We don't really know. It all depends on what the rain gods have to say about it. So what's interesting though is like for right now, even for a lot of the locals or guys like Lee Livesay and the Keith Combs and stuff, I feel like with the lake being as low as it is, it kind of somewhat evens the playing field because the lake is totally different than what it is historically speaking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of those shell beds and points and a lot of that stuff is exposed. It's out of the water right now. There's no water on it. So, you know what I mean? For guys that might be their first or second year, fishing the elites, and then they're not used to being on Fork. Look at Josh Douglas. This is his first time competing on this lake. I don't know, man. I keep an eye on Josh Douglas because that dude is a surgeon with his electronics. I mean, he can dissect a lake, and I think he's probably going to do really well just because of that. And where a lot of these other guys, they're not able to fish spots that historically they've done really well. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, it makes complete sense. It's just pushing them all into more of condensed areas. So
Yeah. Yeah.
fish that may have been floating before, not like dead floating, but floating, just
Right. Right.
randomly cruising, now they're sucked
Yeah.
to what's left of the hard structure and livable water for them. Because I don't know a ton about like topography and bottom contours of Fork, but it's not a super deep reservoir, right?
No, not for the most part. I mean, there are some parts where it gets 90 foot and whatnot over by the dam and whatnot, but no, I mean it's not like an Erie or anything like that. And it's a fairly small body of water. I mean, it's only 28,000 acres, and I forget where I was reading the other night, but basically with the water level being low right now, no, normally Fork is 28,000 acres. Right now, the surface area is I think 25,000 acres. Which, if you look at all the lakes that the Elite Series guys fish, that is significantly smaller than the next smallest lake.
Yeah.
So you're essentially taking the best in the world and you're putting them in a pond. You know how fast these guys are going to figure this lake out? Like the
Day
three
and a
days of
half.
practice. Oh yeah, dude. That 3 days of practice they had, you know how much stuff they found? they're going to absolutely smash them. I'm telling you, it's going to be a slugfest.
I can't wait to watch on Thursday. It's going to be fun.
You and I both.
Yeah. How's the weather forecast looking? Is it going to be nice? Like, there's not going to be any blow days that they get like canceled.
I was looking at it today. There's going to be a chance of rain. I want to say Saturday and Sunday. But as far as like the wind getting canceled, I don't foresee that happening. Awesome. Not based on what I saw this morning when I was looking at the forecast.
Awesome. It's going to be dumb, like silly dumb to watch. No, man.
Yeah.
You're just going to see people doing this and just loading. And you're like, that's the thing that amazes me is like up here in New York, we'll get on a crankbait bite and then everybody starts chucking the crankbaits and they shut off of it. No matter like how you change your retrieve colors, they just get off. Yeah. Down there in Texas, it seems like they always eat a plug. Everybody in the field can be throwing a plug and they're all catching them on a plug.
Yeah, pretty much. It just varies. Your depth range is really just what varies. Sometimes you're throwing deep and other times you're up shallow throwing a square bill, but either way, they're going to eat it. It doesn't really matter time of year.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I got to get down there. Like it's always been a dream of mine to get down to Fork. I don't even care if I fish Fork. I want to get on like the smaller lakes around it because the potential is still there for a giant and I might see like 100 less people on a daily basis.
Exactly. So, Fork is a very, very high pressured body of water. I mean, Sam Rayburn, same thing. I just can't get over the amount of boats, the amount of pressure that lake receives, but it still pumps them out every single weekend. And I think with Sam Rayburn being such a big body of water, there's more surface area for everybody to go. It just kind of blows my mind because Fork's not that big and it just gets hammered. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it can get tough. There's days where you'll go out there and you'll just absolutely just crush them. And then the next day you'll go out there and just struggle. And the conditions haven't changed. It's literally the exact same thing that it was when you caught them. Wind direction is coming. It's the same wind direction. Just everything is the exact same. And that's just Fork. It's a very fickle body of water. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, they manage it very well. So, like a quick shout out to Texas Parks and Recreation.
Texas Parks and Wildlife. Yeah.
Wildlife, yeah. They're all different throughout the states, and they do an incredible job at managing the fisheries in all of Texas, not just Fork. If DNRs knew or paid attention to what Fork, like Texas, does for their lakes, could you imagine the bass fisheries we would have around the country? If every state did that?
What's insane is, I mean, first of all, the amount of 5 to 8 pounders in Lake Fork, it's crazy. We've got this whole slot. For those of you guys that don't know, there's a whole slot limit. Basically, anything between 16 and 24 inches you can't keep. And so the amount of 5 to 8 pounders it's just silly. But another interesting fact about Texas is the share lunker program. I mean, everybody kind of saw just in between last year and so far in 2022, the amount of 13 plus pounders that have been caught in the state of Texas. It's just, it's phenomenal, but they've gotten to a point now with that program to where it's become so successful and they've been able to take those bass and allow them to kind of spawn that all the stocking they're doing now in the lakes, how when they stock these lakes, they're just, they're taking whatever offspring they have and they're releasing those fingerlings into the lakes. And it's just kind of a mixture of whatever fish that they were able to get the offspring from. Every single fish that they're stocking in these lakes, every single offspring is coming from the genes of a 13 plus pounder. So think about it. Let's give it 5 or 10 years and think about what Texas is going to be.
You get a 13 pounder. You get a 15 pounder. Exactly. And you get an 18. Like, it's right? Going to be wild.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was a pretty cool little fun fact, but I'm like, man, that's insane. Like, I mean, the program's been around forever now. And that's pretty cool that they're able to do that now. I mean, they've got right in Athens, Texas, they've got their facility there. And for anybody that hasn't had a chance, if you're ever in Texas, you got to go by there. It's a pretty cool little outfit they're running there.
Yeah, it is absolutely incredible. So Michael McDaniel wants to know, how do you think the wind will affect the offshore bite? When they say 10 to 20, it's more like 15 to 30 with a gust.
So, Michael, that's a good question. The wind in my opinion, the wind helps the bite here. It's the fork is just wild. Like you could literally be fishing a wind blown point, and you've got rollers smashed into the shore, and you're thinking, I'm not going to eat there. Why would a fish be there? They're there. I've seen it. Like they're there. Like they're on that point. That you got big gizzard shad. They're just getting pushed up on that point, and those fish are just there feeding. So, Michael, to answer your question,
shad are getting rolled around and
yeah,
they're stunned and dazed.
Yeah. So, to answer your question, man, I think the wind's actually going to help the bite. I mean, obviously, it makes things a little difficult. You know, when you're trying to control a boat in 30 to 35 mile an hour gust, and you're in timber. Yeah, you're in timber, and you're basically playing bumper boats and getting jerked around everywhere. But in terms of like, you know, with the electronics and you know the power poles and Raptors and stuff that we got now, I mean, it's a little bit more manageable. But the wind definitely is going to help the bite, in my opinion.
Awesome. I keep saying this. I'm going to keep reiterating it. I cannot wait. So, Nick, I want to say thank you. We're a little over an hour now. I do have one last question. It's something we ask everybody who comes onto the show for the first time. I do not warn you about it. We never do, because it's a surprise. So, the question is, if you could have a beer and a steak or whatever your beverage of choice is, sit down with any three people from any timeline, like it could be before Christ, after Christ, whenever, any three people, who would you invite to your steak dinner and sit down and have a beverage with, and why?
Dude, that is a tough question. I'm like on the spot. This is something that I feel like I need a couple days to think about, you know?
Yeah, just kind of got to like spit them out there.
All right, so we'll start with well, obviously it's gonna be a ribeye.
Yeah,
it's probably gonna be a Dos Equis lager. I mean, if I'm picking and choosing, that's where we're going first.
It sounds like we're getting the most interesting man in the world in for dinner.
Yeah. Dude, oh man, that's crazy. We talking like fishing industry or just
doesn't matter? It can be anybody. It could be Michael Jordan. It could be your great grandfather you never knew. Like, I can't tell you who you can and can't choose, but any three people, and just a short explanation why you would choose them for your dinner.
Well, one would probably be, for those of you guys that know or have any kind of history or knowledge of military history, one would probably be Chesty Puller, who is a well-known Marine, served back in the day, and 5 Navy crosses. Dude was just he's not human. Like, he just wasn't human. And there's some famous quotes and stuff that you learn going through boot camp and stuff, and you hear stories about this guy, and you just scratch your head and you're going, man, this guy's wild. But I would love to just be able to sit there and pick this dude's brain and you know, just hear what he had to say. I mean, just what kind of individual this is. I want to hear how his thought process and how his brain, you know, works and all that. Second would probably be my great grandfather. Would definitely like to, you know, big on my family lineage, and would love to know more about the history of my family. And man, third person, I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be easy. Like, the thing that we love about it is the reaction when the question comes out, because everybody's like, why didn't you warn me about this?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point. Like, it's supposed to catch you off guard. It's a little less serious part of the Serious Angler podcast.
You know, we'll go with somebody current. You know, we went with some historical folks. I would like to. I'm having a brain fart. Tesla. What's his name?
Elon.
Yeah.
Elon Musk. Yeah.
I'd like to sit down and have a conversation with Elon Musk. Just want to kind of hear, some of his views on the world and kind of what, what his thoughts and see if I could get him to kind of fill me on what his plans are. Cause I mean, he's an interesting individual and, he's got money to do some pretty wild things.
He might be like the modern day Einstein. He's not going to go create the nuclear bomb, but he's basically doing everything else that nobody could do.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued just by like that whole thing. Like,
yeah.
So that would be pretty cool. So that would be my 3. That would be my 3 at dinner. Prime rib, ribeye. I said prime rib, ribeye, and a Dos Equis lager.
Sounds like a good dinner.
Yeah, it does.
And there'll be some quite interesting conversations.
For sure.
I can almost see like your great grandfather being almost like an offset in the conversation. And then the Marine, Chester Pooley, you said, right? I don't want to pronounce his name.
Chesty Puller.
Chesty Puller. I apologize. And Elon Musk, because he'd be like, why did you want to be a Marine? And like, why didn't you want to do that? Like, it'd just be a crazy conversation just between those two.
Yeah. I have a feeling it would be yeah. The thing is, like, it would probably be the 3 of them just getting hammered together. I could see it, like, 100%.
Got more ribeyes coming? So, well, Nick, I want to thank you for taking the time. Thank you for everything that you do for everyone out there that could really use a helping hand. And thank you, most importantly, for your service and time.
Thanks.
Like, us normal civilians out there couldn't have the life we do without the military service. So thank you for everybody who tuned in, everybody who listens. Yeah. Sincerely. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on and taking the time and for reaching out. I know this is our second go trying to make this happen. So I appreciate it. And again, thank you to everybody else who tuned in and watched. Really appreciate the opportunity, guys, and I look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of you guys out on the water.
Yeah, I'm sure after this, some people might be hitting you up for a guide trip. Hopefully, fingers are crossed. But
let's go.
Yeah, just real quick, for everybody who tuned in, please leave a comment or a review on the Apple Podcasts or thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of Nick's pages are going to be down below. It's his Instagram and his website. So go over, like a bunch of his posts, comment on them, reach out. I'm sure from what I've seen, he'll be a decent person and talk to you back. Thank you for everything, Nick. And for now, guys, we will see you on Friday.